Welcome to another episode of Race Analysis, where we're going to break down the Cat 3-4 race from the 2020 Cal Aggie Criterium with myself, Coach Jonathan Lee. This is on board with me in this race. And I have two people here to find out how we can be better racers and improve ourselves all the time.
To help.
Yes. Team Cliffbar Racing's Pete Morris.
How's it going, guys?
And Cannondale's Amber Pierce.
Yo, I'm here.
So, first race of the season.
Yeah, that's awesome, right?
Yep. This course is something that's pretty common, and if you are looking at this, you can see the full race, and there will be a link down in the description below to be able to see the full race, but we've done plenty of race analysis videos from this course before. Pete, do you want to explain it?
Yeah, it's kind of a long, stretched-out circle course with a chicane on the backside and a kind of a really small roller leading into the chicane, so all the tech is kind of crammed in 30 seconds of the 2-minute course, and the rest is wide open and flowy.
I'd say the last turn is a pinch more than a turn. It's kind of interesting because it just like funnels the line choice down, but it's not that you don't slow down.
If you're at the front, you don't deviate your line at all.
Yeah,
right?
But it's decisive enough that if you're not in position with that turn, it can adjust your position and kind of decide the fate of the end of the race.
Right. And the rest of the corners on this course are super wide and gentle, so there's a lot of room to maneuver and a lot of good lines you can take.
And the wind was pretty mellow today.
Yeah, if anything, so if you're watching the course and looking at the course map, that's probably the best way to orient yourself with that. And the wind was coming just slightly out of the southwest. But it was variable. As you can see, it's pretty foggy that morning, so it's kind of blustery at times, like it would push from one side to the next. But relatively speaking, wind had no effect. So which was I kind of like the wind, but that's fine.
Yeah. This course is susceptible since it's so long. It's usually pretty crosswindy, but not today.
Yeah. Thankfully, right? Okay, so where do we want to start with this one, Pete and Amber?
I think this is a good place to start. You're doing a great job. It's the first race of the season. It's your first race. It's everybody's. So kind of getting a lay of the land, seeing who's in the field, seeing how you feel, and paying attention to everybody else that's in the race that you're racing against is important for the first handful of minutes.
In this moment just now, you just moved up several positions as the field was slowing. And we've talked about that before. As soon as the field bunches up and slows down, it's a great time to move forward.
Yeah, use the gutter line there on the side.
Yeah,
the gutter's fine.
That gutter is a great way to move up.
Yeah.
And definitely, if over the course of the race, just doing that every single time, pushing yourself forward with no pedaling you can't go wrong.
How about we skip forward to about 15 minutes into the race, because really my goal with this one was just to not do much do minimal efforts as possible.
I was going to say, you actually did a wonderful job of surfing about the front third of the pack for the first 15 minutes, so I'm sure it was laughably easy, right?
It was.
And that's the goal. If you're racing and it's laughably easy for you, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
That's if you're like, I can't believe this race is as easy as it is, you're doing things correctly.
Right.
So keep doing that.
Cool. Let's fast forward. So right here I'm behind Chaz Halbert, who is a fast racer, strong rider, and also knows how to win on this course. He's won a handful of times here. So I was kind of staying close to him.
Yeah, good move.
Yeah. He's a good rider, a good wheel to follow, right? Yeah, that's for sure. And one thing worth saying on that chicane is the only thing amongst all the boringness that I learned so far of the race being slow was that the corner was an opportunity where I had to make up a lot of time. But that's really all I gleaned in trying to survey the land, kind of figure out the riders.
Yeah, and paying attention to that stuff over the course of the race is important.
Especially early on when you're not doing much.
Right, yeah. So right here, I think that at this point, the pack was it was slowing down. And I was on the front, but you can see, so to give people an idea, my threshold down there at sea level at this point was probably somewhere around 320 to 330, somewhere around there. So relatively easy, and there goes an attack.
Yeah, and being on the front of the race when it's slow, that's a good opportunity to not chase things down. You want to let everybody fill in exactly like you're doing right now. There's another point of this is you're actually filling in on the part of the race where it's the easiest. So you're double dipping. You're getting the efficient ride behind everybody, and it's where the speed's already up. So you're actually getting the easiest ride to close down gaps on the whole course. So it's like the perfect scenario where people just keep coming around you and filling it in, and you almost touch threshold when closing down an attack, which is
great.
That's awesome.
That's where you want to be.
And look, and now you're back in the pack strung out behind you, but you're coasting leading into the hill, everything's fine. This is where you're slightly more efficient than everybody, and you see that the group is up the road, but you know that this corner plays to your strengths, and so you're not worried about it. You just take a little bit on the inside and watch you guys shut down the gap with no extra work.
Right.
Yeah. Can we talk about the chicane really quick here?
Yeah.
As far as like turning in, going inside. I found that so it's never good to dive on a rider, right, Amber? Like just like T-bone a
just
person.
out of respect for your competitors, it's just not a good thing to do.
But it felt like the inside was always open on this one. Like no one was hardly ever cutting it so close that there was no room.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, if as you're watching the dynamics of the race and you see a line that nobody's taking but it's perfectly safe, as long as you can take that line safely, like you just do right now, you come in through the inside and make up a bunch of time on that corner, there's no reason not to do it. As long as you're not putting yourself or anybody around you at risk, you're good.
Yeah, the only thing I noticed with it is that it would slow down my speed more. I'd make a tighter turn. It would slow me down a bit more suddenly.
Yep.
But I just I had to think of that, because if I was if I was close to my limits, that would be really hard to have to accelerate.
I was just going to say that's the only card you have to play when you do take that inside tighter turn. You accelerate harder out of the corner.
Right.
So you have to know that you're going to trade some energy and some speed for some positioning.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
And at different points in the race, that may make sense, and at other points, it may not. So, you know, everything that we were just saying about letting riders come around you and finding the easy way to cover that move. At this stage of the race, it's not super critical. If we were in the last 3 laps, you might not want to do the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So let's fast forward again, shall we?
Yeah.
Since you're staying efficient, we don't have to worry.
Ish. Yeah. Okay, so now we're getting to a point where Pete, you pointed something out, because I guess this video is really about like racing efficiently until you, I guess you're racing efficiently the whole time.
Yeah, especially at the end.
Yeah, but this course kind of has like a spot where every time it seems like it accelerates, and that happens kind of often on courses, right? Like if it's laps, it's like trends develop.
Yeah, you find patterns.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is we've talked about this a lot with plain old 4-corner crits with long straights, but this is the same thing. Here's that pinch point where John was talking about. Everybody slows down and then has to take the corner. But this is where everybody really accelerates, because they think that everybody is going slow behind them. So everybody really pedals hard because they're making a difference in the race right here and now.
Friends and family are there.
This is the start finish where everybody is. So
watch this.
As you watch, people are just filling in front of John, and the race is strung out in front of him. But as you guys get up to speed, now you're going 28, 30 miles an hour. And you're sheltered, and you start to make this bend. This is where it's really easy to just keep pedaling, and then you're passing everybody.
Not a lot of watts either.
Yeah, very easy compared to how much you were doing from the corner to the start-finish line. And then the important part is everybody kind of tires themselves out for this stretch, but since you were efficient, you can pay attention, survey the scene, and where this is like the crux of the race. Where it mostly happens on this course, you're ready, and you're surfing wheels and right there to respond to anything.
Yeah, you're in great position here. You've got a draft, you've got a really good line of sight on what's happening in the race, and you have a good out, to get to move out and do what you need to do right there.
Yeah, and even relatively speaking, like right here, it's still, not high wattage. If I'm still below threshold. That was the bump, like the little steep kicker, and it's still not a lot. You'll see the little push that I did right here. And this push was basically to get to the point where I could have a clear track, just so that I could go through here. And that rider sprinted through. I was like, oh no, but then he went far enough that it was fine. Because once again, this was like the strength that I wanted to use. Like, I figured if I went through these turns at the same effort level, but without following the other lines of other riders, I was able to gain like 20 bike lengths.
Oh, yeah, that was amazing.
So because of that, I didn't want to give that away. Like, if you were to basically cross the finish line every time and somebody was to ask you, like, hey, would you like 20 bike lengths? You'd be like, yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? You wouldn't say no. So why turn that opportunity down when it comes up?
And for people who can't, or if you're in a position where you can't fight to get to the front for that corner, you can still play that efficiency game and do it with everybody and pedal less hard, right? So start coasting earlier, don't pedal as hard out of the corner, and you can still use your efficiency even without being on the front by like creating your own mini game in that 20 seconds of as little pedaling as possible.
Yeah, I mean, another way of thinking about it is who slows down the least.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not always about creating and maintaining. I mean, maintaining speed is maintaining speed, but you can also think about think of that as just slowing down less. Where can you slow down less?
That's a really good way to look at it, right? Because then that doesn't come at any like increased cost.
Yeah.
There are plenty of other ways where you're like, I could sprint harder here, go faster here, do something like that, but all that comes with cost. Whereas slow down less.
Yeah.
It's free. It's free. And it's also more fun, believe it or not. Let's fast forward once again to another point where we can talk about some efficiency. And actually, this is kind of like an interesting point where we'll fast forward, because it was kind of like you mentioned earlier, Amber, kind of falling back and trying to take stock of the field. So we'll go to a position where I do that.
Ooh, let's check it out.
Okay, so coming into this section, there was a rider who actually on the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast earlier this week, which you can check that out if you don't. He said, and he joined us for the live stream, and he said, I'm just going to hold Jonathan's wheel the whole time. And his name was Griffin.
Awesome.
And then he came up to me and he said, hey, I'm going to hold your wheel the whole time. And I said, you must be Griffin. So,
hi, Griffin.
Hey. So he was behind me. He had, just like the Williams brothers, he had like the GoPro Session on the back of his Specialized Evade. He had the LA Sprint. He looked like a stocky sprinter. So I was like, he might be tough to sprint against. So right here, I actually, over that bump, I knew he was behind me. So I just picked it up a bit. And then I went into this turn and carried momentum into the turn and wanted to see what the gap was like.
Right, just testing the field. How are people going to respond?
And him specifically, because I was wondering if he's a really good sprinter. One good way, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Pete, but one good way on this course to hurt a sprinter's chances against you are to go in or to take some energy away from them before they get to this final stretch.
Yeah.
And if I can get a gap for free and he has to close that down, which happened.
Exactly. And there's 10 minutes left in the race, or less than 10 minutes left in the race. It's a great test of the waters. One thing that if he's a real sprinter, I would worry that he would do nothing and just sit up and let everybody else do it, which he could have done that. I couldn't tell from the video, but you know, those real like Cavendish style sprinters will just do absolutely nothing, and then they'll just be there at the end.
Yeah, that's an important bit of context. Like anytime, like if I moved my left elbow, his left elbow would move. You know what I mean? Like
he's really following.
He was following the wheel.
Okay.
Yeah. So I figured that was like that's a really good point. A savvy racer is going to understand what's going on, and they're not going to follow that.
Right. And if your move works when you're testing and you want to use it again, you've just kind of signaled to the rest of the field what you are thinking about doing.
Yes, and this is a bit of foreshadowing for another race, or you find yourself in a situation where suddenly you have a gap. Now what the heck do you do with it?
Now what do you do?
I'm pretty sure everybody in the field knew you could take the corners faster than everybody at this point, right?
No, that was only the second time I'd gone through them, I think. So otherwise I just stayed in the pack because I kind of didn't want to signal on that regard.
Yeah.
But I did end up signaling. I could, so mission failed in that regard.
Right.
Let's fast forward to another point here where we start talking about kind of like fighting for position. Actually, we can probably let it go from here because we're almost into the final laps.
I would say this is a good spot where you can see that you're kind of in the bubble. And this is where the fighting kind of happens. There's 5 minutes left in the race, approximately. And this is one of the good parts on this course. I saw you take both the inside and the outside. The inside was more sheltered, but it had worse pavement, and you could get shut down. And now that it's the end of the race, you're on the outside where it costs a little bit more energy, but you're always open for anything that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a really good assessment of it. And I was constantly in my mind, I'm like, the bumps versus the wind, right?
Yeah. Well, and versus getting boxed, like Pete said, in the end of the race, that becomes really, really important, because if you're not there, good luck sprinting.
Yeah, here I have many options on the inside. I kind of have one, so to speak.
Right.
And one last piece with staying that outside, you actually get the best line into this corner, like you've been taking, where you just kind of creep in.
There you go.
No real extra work. 500 watts out of that corner is totally manageable. And then you're in the good position where you can kind of decide how tight to take this second chicane. And look, you're in fifth wheel with no work.
There you go.
And this rider is the rider I wanted to be right with toward the finish because I knew that he would be pretty good. We even rode the weekend before, so I kind of had like a good fix on where he was at, so to speak.
Well, it's great when you know a good wheel, you know it's somebody that you can trust, you kind of understand their body language and how they ride. I mean, it's great to find those wheels in the field because it's a lot less mental load for you. You can feel confident that you're on the wheel. You don't have to worry about them, and you can focus on everything else.
Yeah, that's a huge point. Like just being a known quantity, just having as many of those as possible makes the race so much easier to navigate. Even if it's just psychologically speaking.
Oh yeah, it's
just because you can have things figured out. So,
and even if you just know someone who wants to finish well, who will make the extra effort at the end of a race, you don't have to know how they ride. They don't have to be the same type of rider as you, but you can use them as kind of like a point of reference where you can always make sure that you're near around them and paying attention to what they're doing.
So that attack that just went right there, I felt like at this point I had a good fix on the field, and I was like, okay, I don't think that's going to be like a race-winning move because we're coming into the bell lap here.
Right.
And I tried to let everybody fill in front of me with the anticipation that it would slow down again like it has every lap.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it did slow down. But here's the thing. I've lost this race so many times now because I moved forward too early.
Oh.
And if you look, I got pretty far forward. And I know that we have these 3 riders up here. And I end up attacking. We'll probably end up rewinding through this this moment a little bit. But right here, I kind of was like, uh-oh, because I was, number 1, I had that little gap in front of me. Number 2, those 3 riders in front of me, they weren't consequential, I didn't think, to the race finish.
Oh.
I was wrong about the kid in second.
Foreshadowing.
So I attacked. So I'm going to actually rewind it here a little bit, and we'll go through this attack a little bit more.
Yeah, I think let's pause it like 5 seconds before you attack. So jumping into this final stretch, one of the things I think we should pay attention to is those guys in front of you. We're going fast already, so let's pause it.
Should we pause it when we get to the attack?
Yeah, let's pause right here.
Right here. Cool.
So one of the things that, as you were shutting down that gap, I think you could have waited even 5-10 seconds longer for the hill, which is more in your wheelhouse, and the corners are more in your wheelhouse, and so you had to kind of use your explosive effort before when it wasn't in your favor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think they were going fast enough that you could still explode when guys start coming around you. You kind of have the right side protected because there's that pothole on the right side. No one's going to come through on the pothole side, hopefully.
Which was intentional.
Yeah.
I was hoping that was the case.
Yeah.
And you had the gap in front of you, so you could look over your shoulder a little bit and not worry about running into the wheels in front of you. I probably wouldn't have timed it off anybody else, but just hold on as long as you can until you get to the hill or the corner. Like every 1 second, that's 5 more bike lengths you're going to have coming out of it, right?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
I felt so like when I got into this position, there was a lot of like, uh-oh in my head.
Yeah.
So like, and I'm just going to rewind a little bit more. So there were a couple things, I'll just rewind 10 seconds here. But there were a couple things coming into this. Number 1, I knew that I actually wanted to attack at the top of the hill to go into the chicane, but everything slowed down right here. And then I went over that pothole, and then I saw the yellow guy attack, and actually heard somebody behind me say, roll, I thought. So I was like, uh-oh, somebody else is going to attack. So I didn't want to get into a situation where I had to be stuck behind somebody in the chicane, and I didn't have to worry about that in hindsight, honestly.
No.
But when you have race brain, sometimes you don't think clearly.
There's a very terrifying monster in the corner.
Yes.
Yes.
But yeah, I think the way you were kind of manhandling the corner all through the race and taking the inside, even if someone fought you for the corner, I would have
gotten it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have bet against you. And then you'd be using all that energy you used before the hill right now.
Yes. So right now I'm going into this, and I catch a glance back, and I realize, okay, I've got a gap, but it's not a gap that's going to last to the line.
Right.
And so I kind of went into like, okay, audible, and you can see my power. It's going to start to drop down. And I admittedly played possum here a bit. So shoulders were slumped, head was dropped.
Right. Oh, man,
and when Chaz came around me, he thought, oh, good, he's wrecked. I'm going to come around him. But I thought, okay, this is going to be a sprint, not a solo move. So I kind of snapped in line.
Right.
But I was right behind Chaz. And in my mind, I kind of boiled this down to like, Chaz is going to win. And that's just what he's going to be the one that I'm sprinting against.
Yeah, there's no one else.
No one else. Because we simplify things in a foolish manner. So Chaz goes, I go. I was wrecked from that hard move. The sprint, you can see the wattage is super low for me, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a long effort.
Yep. and I completely out of gas, like lights out.
Yep.
Check engine light was on. Do you want to rewind through anything else from that finish?
Yeah, let's go back one more thing through that sprint. Let's take it from the corner.
Okay, cool.
So here is when Chaz passes you, and I think you definitely make the right move, accelerate a little bit, and make sure you're on his wheel into this hard section. You do a good job of that, and you leave just that little bit of a sprinter's gap, which is ideal. So the only thing I would do now is with that sprinter's gap, take a look behind you and see how far everybody is arrayed out. You know that I would have probably sprinted earlier even, as terrible as that sounds, sprinting 5 more seconds. But if you can catch those guys behind you off guard by 1 or 2 seconds, I mean, it's, who knows, it's half a dozen, 1 to 6 the other, but they only beat you by a couple feet. The snap could have been the difference, and they might have never caught you.
I agree. Yeah, I think that with that, there's a moment that comes in every sprint, and I'm going to rewind one more time to the turn. But there's a time that comes in every sprint where you basically find yourself, and this is just coming into the corner here in the last one, you basically find yourself like, okay, this is the moment when you should launch a sprint.
Right.
And if you can anticipate that and go just before, that's the hard thing. I mean, how many times have we all been caught out by a sprint where like we're sprinting as hard as we can, but we just can't close it enough?
Oh, yeah.
So, and like you said, Pete, being heads up to take stock of where everybody is around me would have been a good move.
Yeah, that awareness can be really crucial.
I tried to stay close to Chaz to get lateral draft, and then I heard him coming to this side, so I did not swerve, but I just let myself drift toward that side.
Yeah, you sprinted straight.
Fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think point yourself at the start-finish line, and you're going to take the shortest path there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And everybody can assume that. I think that's a very reasonable assumption.
Well, nice job.
Yeah.
No,
Third. Good race.
Third. It's not. It's not nothing.
It's not nothing, as they say.
So if you look at like the first 10 minutes of this race, it was pretty darn easy. And like you said, Pete, that's kind of ideal. Like you want it to feel really easy. Because at this point, and if you're looking at like the ride on TrainerRoad right now, if we zoom in on the first 10 minutes, you can see how much time I actually spent far below threshold, right? Only the little spikes, basically, probably the chicanes coming out of that every time.
Right.
But 206 with down there, effectively my FTP was like 325.
Yeah.
That's easy.
That's easy for 10 minutes.
Easy.
That's like letting your legs wake up, getting the lay of the land, and not working hard at all.
It's like the dream.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great way to get started. And all that energy you're saving, you can put into the back end of the race when it really counts.
Yep. If you enjoyed that video, let us know with a comment down below. Tell us either what you may have done or what we missed out on.
And if you want to see more race analysis videos, we got tons more. Check out our race analysis playlist.
If you like this video, give us a thumbs up.
If you want to be faster, head over to TrainerRoad.com.